Hello, viewers. Here we are once again with another session on questions and answers. We have been over the last few weeks talking about the sacraments, and today we are going to talk about the sacraments of holy orders. How does one become a priest in the Catholic Church? And as we have, as usual, Father Ronnie D'Souza, Jesuit, who is going to explain to us how it all works up in the Catholic Church about Catholic priest. So, Father, thank you very much once again for joining us. And let me straight away get into the first question. How can one receive the sacrament of holy orders? Who can and how can?
Okay. Actually, this word holy orders is actually, there are two sacraments among the sacraments. There are two sacraments which are known as social sacraments. One is matrimony, because you don't get married to yourself.
Yeah.
Similarly, also the sacrament of the priesthood, or orders in that sense, where a person becomes a priest not for himself, has no meaning in the priesthood to be a priest for himself. He has got to be for the community. And therefore, it is actually called the ministerial priesthood.
Okay. Right.
See, because otherwise there is a priesthood which is the universal priesthood which you share in. The very fact when you are baptized in the priesthood of Jesus Christ, priest, prophet and king. That the three dimensions, so there you get it. However, I would like to make a bit of a distinction here. There is also what is known as holy orders, referring to people who become religious. Now, this is not exactly the priesthood. A person could become a lay brother, but he could be a lay brother, or what we call a brother, a working brother in a particular congregation, where he does not become a priest, but he has got vows. Now, this is the question of vows, but we are not speaking there today about this much. We are talking about the priesthood. I just would like to make it a distinction. Maybe on another day I could explain a little more about the holy orders as such, referring to the three vows. See? But at the moment, referring to the priesthood itself, I will talk about the ministerial priesthood. And the priesthood has got, of course, the fullness of the priesthood is in the bishop. We priests have got in our own ministries how much we are assigned to. So we are ordained by a bishop who is the fullness of the priesthood, and he ordains us to be ministering for what particular thing.
Right.
Unlike, for instance, I have mentioned to you already, where I as a normal priest have been given the power to christen a particular person, take the sacrament of confirmation. I do not know of any time when a person is ordained a priest by another priest. No, it has to be a bishop.
Right.
That's it. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let us go to the basics first. How does one know he is called to be a priest?
Now, I can give the best example is I can give you myself. When I was in SSC, and by SSC I am referring to 11th standard in those days. When I was in the SSC, my elder brother had joined the Navy.
Right.
And I wanted to join the Navy, and I was telling my mother all sorts of things. He said, next year, this time you will find me in the Navy, and that's what I will. During that year, we had a retreat. Now, I went for that retreat, and I do not know what was it, because I was not a very pious guy or anything of that sort. But I just felt the Lord was telling me I'm going to become a priest. And the only priest I knew at that particular time was Jesuit priest, because in Belgaum there were no other priests.
Right. Okay.
So the only priests I knew were the Jesuit priests. So I said, I'm going to become a priest. That's what I'm referring to. And the very strange thing about it is, when I told my mother that I'm going to become, I was feeling happy. It was not a shy, this thing, or feeling a joyful thing. I said something great when I said, there's a very strange thing about it, because otherwise, if you want to know how pious I was, my father was in that sense a pious person. He never allowed anybody in the family to be missing out daily mass. daily mass was compulsory. That was absolute. We boys, if we missed it, we missed, and it was, had to be, the punishment would be no games for you today. That's it, very clear. And in those days, games meant a lot of things for us. So anyway, but I was going for daily mass, and I had all learned to serve mass, and I was happy to serve mass and daily serving mass. And I know that there were a few people who said, this fellow is going to become a priest. I used to laugh at it until that retreat, and then after that, things went on very fast in the sense of the priests who were there in Belgaum. They called me and they asked me. So, if you ask me now, what is it that makes a call which you feel from within? A real strange thing, because, as I said, they will examine me. They did have. I had 4 people to examine me, 4 priests who examined me, and find out what did I know about the sacrament, how was my religious life in the sense of my the Christian life behaving. And since they found nothing exceptionally bad, I was considered a good chap because I was celebrating, I was going for a daily mass and all. But it was a funny thing, it was when I was used to tell them boastfully, I'll join the Navy, I'm going to join the Navy and all that. It was with boast, but nothing special about it. But when I said I'm going to become a priest, there was this strange joy inside to tell them even that. And that's what I say, I cannot explain more than that.
Yeah.
But there was a real happiness within me. Hey, what's happened? What's happened to me? I had to ask myself about that. That's it. So I believe God will call you for that. But there will be people who will test and check whether this is the proper vocation or not. And in any case, even after they have checked up, your formation is a testing ground. In the diocese, they have the orientation course, which is, for us we have our novitiates, 2 years of novitiate, during which time very clearly the tests which are given to us, which including the long retreat, 30-day retreat. During that time, at the end of that, the novice master will normally tell, you're fit to be a Jesuit or you're not fit to be a Jesuit. That's it. Well,
all right, okay. So, in other situations where young boys, young teenagers are thinking of a career, what would be the ideal age, you think, that usually youngsters can decide that, yes, I think I should become a priest?
Now, I wouldn't speak from the point of view of age so much as I'd say minimum 12th standard pass.
Okay.
Because that age, that would be, today I think so, what would that be, 17, 18?
Yeah.
18, that would be it. Okay. See, even at that time, there are provinces in the society and the others who are not accepting them. But in the diocese in Goa now, for instance, they have the seminary in Saligaon. So they take the kids up to in the 8th standard, during which time they are studying for the normal school career, but they are being initiated into priestly or the life of a person committed to Jesus. That's
right. Okay. Now, we have Salesians, we have Jesuits, we have Carmelites, etc., and we also have the diocesan group.
Yeah.
How does one select which is the right order or whatever you call it to be in?
I do not know how a person would be able to see. I believe it is God who ultimately does it, because there are people who I have given retreats to Salesian youngsters before when they're in their formation. I feel that they are called to that particular way of life, and none of my business to interfere and say, you should have become a Jesuit or you should have become something else. When you begin to talk to them and in retreat, when this discern what happened to you and why do you, I just like this way of this thing, what their work they're doing with the children, with the boys and with the others. I feel that was okay. That's fine. That's what we are called to, that way of life. When a person tells, I've seen this, your work in the schools you Jesuits are doing, and how the people like you, and also that you were working with the children, with the boys, and when you used to give talks there sometimes, or even when you were in the field, we come to play with us, we liked you about it. Okay, that's fine. So they feel it will be, I would say, ultimately it is God's call, because He uses people who will somehow or the other deal with them and show, this is what I want you to be, this is where I'm going. I'm not denying that we play our part where we try and get vocations. I'm going to find out if there were. But ultimately, I would be very clear about this as far as I'm concerned. If, for instance, I discern this particular person would be fit for another congregation, I would want him to go to that congregation, definitely. Or if he's meant for a diocesan priest, to be a diocesan priest.
So what would be the qualification to say, yes, I want to be a diocesan priest as opposed to a Jesuit or a Salesian?
Okay, if a diocesan priest is meant for the diocese, he will be fixed in Goa, for instance. Ultimately, most of the work will be in Goa. A Salesian or a Jesuit or anybody else would be, you're a mission oriented, and therefore you could be transferred anywhere outside Goa also. Are you ready for that? And would that be ready from that point of view? Would your parents be open to that and all that? Okay. And I know of a lot of parents who no, we will be on to be a diocesan priest because can be in Goa.
Now you said 12th standard is the minimum qualification.
Yeah.
What about the spiritual aspect?
Okay.
12th standard is only a kind of
age-wise.
Age-wise.
Fine.
But what about the spiritual side?
Now that is where they begin to. So already in the beginning, for instance, now I give you my formation only. We started with a timetable which my brother was finding absolutely absurd for him, because he knew I was a fellow very fond of games and wanting to do. And when I used to tell him, we get up in the morning, it's silence, absolute silence. Then we go and spend 1 hour of prayer. What 1 hour of prayer? What are you going to do? What are you doing? Because I would never have understood it. But we were already just thrown into it, actually, in the sense of my first year formation itself. When we went there, we were told to, you prepare your points. So they would try and help us in the beginning with how you prepare the points for your meditation in the morning. Morning we got up and then we had to sit down and spend time in prayer, and more than once I have dozed off and slept during that time. But I was told, no, this is not correct. You should stand up and move about so that you're not sleepy. You don't give in to sleep. Just don't take that as an excuse. Okay, I went to sleep. It was a mistake. No. This is asking the Lord for forgiveness and try again. And you may say that was the difficult part initially, but within a month, I would have begun to get accustomed to that. And then the timetable after that followed. So then when we realized it, and the question of speaking came only after lunch in what is known as recreation time, when we were allowed to talk. So with a timetable like that, where a lot of prayer, a lot of physical work, manual work, we had manual work, very strict manual work, and also after that, reading of the lives of saints and reading what we know as spiritual reading. We had lives of saints and the other. There was a time when we were kind of literally being brainwashed, if we call it that, into this. Do you begin to feel this is your way of life? And we had quite a few people in realizing, I can't fit into this. Yeah. Okay, it's automatically sealed off.
But the Jesuits, the Salesians, the other groups, some of them take 8 years, some 12 years. Why is that such a lot of difference, and why is the training so long?
Now, ours is the longest as far as I know. I took 14 years to be ordained priest, but I have no qualms of conscience about it, but I feel it was necessary. During the time when, for instance, novitiate is very, very important. When after that you make our first vows. That's, complete poverty, chastity and obedience. That's what I would talk about holy orders. Anyway, then as a commitment, it was a commitment to the society. Okay. But then I was sent for my training as a priest, where I was sent for my philosophy. Now before that, of course, we had our junior studies, where we had to learn languages. Of course, that time, as I say, I had to know my Latin. We had to learn a bit of Greek. And while, we boastfully we used to have our rosary in Greek, and however, I don't know what the Greeks would say when they heard us saying the prayers, but we proudly said, maybe that rosary, which normally would take half an hour, about 10 to 15 minutes, would take more than half an hour because we were had to pronounce every word of it.
Yeah, that's right.
But we learned that now. In that Greek, we used to study the scriptures. Not that we understood too much of it, but we were learning how to translate and similarly Latin. Latin was the important part because it was prior to Vatican II.
Okay.
I'm talking about where my own this information was.
So why does the church need bishops, priests, deacons, etc.? Why?
Okay, wait. Now, deacons and priests would be a formation thing. Now, why we need bishops? At the head of each diocese, you have the head in the sense of where the coordinating of the whole diocese about each. There's no parish priest who is an isolate by himself. He comes under the diocese. So somebody to govern that diocese with all his entourage in the sense of the finance person in charge of the finances, person in charge of also the other things and the other rules regarding the particular parishes and all that, comes in the bishop's house. So they have their own, you have the bishop's curia who manages the diocese. So you have this thing. This is more from the point of view of administration. But bishop has got the dignity of, is the person who's got the fullness of the priesthood, can ordain other priests. From that point of view, yes, he is. You had in the time of Jesus already, where you had the first bishop of Jerusalem was James. He was the bishop of, so fully ordained, and he could ordain other priests. That's what was happening.
But for example, I know that Jesuits have provincials.
Yes.
So isn't that okay in the sense of why do you need a bishop and a provincial?
No. Provincial is for this particular order of where we Jesuits are concerned. For us Jesuits. But I am working in a diocese in Goa, I come under the bishop. For as far as where I can be put and what other things, if I require, for instance, to go to a particular parish or anything, I would have to go through the parish priest. That comes under the parish, under the diocese.
Right.
So, for instance, you know that I go for Mass to the Panjim church, but I come under the parish priest there.
Right. So, how does one go about selecting a bishop then?
No, that is not our concern. The selection of the bishop comes in Rome, where people who know about things and discuss things, they are in charge of the diocese of the bishops around. They will find out now in this diocese what is the situation and all that, and who should be ordained or consecrated bishop, because you require a particular type of person there to administer this diocese and all. So they would be choosing it. Now there is an element of among the priests there of that particular diocese who would be electing or selecting somebody or the other. But that's not the question of that person will be ordained. That has to be sent to Rome. And Rome will decide what will be this.
So our auxiliary bishop,
Yes.
our Bishop Simeon,
Yeah.
he was selected by Rome or by the cardinal?
No, the cardinal may have sent him to Rome for his studies. I remember him that time when he was in the Pastoral Institute, but he was sent for studies, and now they found him a good person for administering, already there. So the cardinal suggested him. Then there would be that group of people who would take that into consideration, and he could be, so he said, okay, he is ordained for that particular.
Okay, so we've got the bishops and priests covered. What about our deacons? What happens there?
Now, deacons is a step in the priesthood. For instance, once you have been ordained, you've done your studies. Say you've studied of philosophy and theology, which is concerning mainly the thing. Now, after having done that, you are working now. You are saying you're going to be a priest. You want to be a priest. So you're given an opportunity till this time now. Do you want to live up to this particular way of life? And in the Catholic Church, we have deacons who, and by referring to the deacons who are going to be ordained priests, these will be clearly your question of, given you're completely renouncing going to get married. That would be the diaconate. Till that time, you could get out and get married, and that's fine. But once you have been ordained deacon, you're going in for the priesthood. Because you have also other deacons, married deacons, but they will never be ordained priests. They will not be ordained priests. That's fine. That is a lay person who have been given, they have done their studies, both in philosophy and theology, found competent enough, they can be ordained.
They can be ordained.
They can be ordained deacon.
Yeah, but that means if the one that is going to be a priest is ordained as a deacon, and the one that is married is ordained as a deacon.
But as a married deacon, that means he's called even a married deacon. So he's not going to be a priest. He's not going to be a priest.
But both the functions are the same.
Yeah, similar, very, very similar, yes.
Okay, right, okay.
So,
just to be clear that what Father Ronnie just said is, there are two types of deacons. One is the ones who are about to be made priests, they become a deacon initially, and then there is the married person who is
studied everything.
Yeah, right.
Prepared himself to be a deacon.
But I believe, Father, in certain churches, like even in Goa,
yeah.
I'm told that married people cannot become deacons. Because they say we have enough priests, so why you want married people to be
deacons?
deacons?
That's what they're saying. I know, for instance, in Porvorim, there used to be a married deacon. There was a married deacon. I don't know now, but that was many years ago. That he was a married deacon. He would come there, proclaim the gospel, and on days when it was needed, he would really break the word of God. They were trained enough in that. They are trained enough and all in that manner. But in the States, for instance, it's very common. Almost every parish has one particular ordained deacon paid by that particular parish.
But having said that, Father, we are on one hand saying that the number of people wanting to become priests now is declining.
Yes.
But on the other hand, if you are not permitting married people to become deacons, what are you saying?
No, we are not prepared. We are not saying this. I don't know this. I am surprised about this here in Goa, that it is the reason given from what you mentioned already, that they said we have enough of priests, we have enough of deacons. I am a little surprised at that.
But then we also have what is known as the Eastern Church.
Yes.
Now, first and foremost, I do not know what is Eastern Church. Can you please explain that briefly?
See, when the church was started, actually, you call it in Jerusalem. Then after that, they spread out. From Jerusalem, the people went to that was Constantinople, and then they wanted to go. Now, in Constantinople, there was a tradition of Eastern rites, that meaning things which have been quite focused on a liturgy, which is lots of expression, outward expression of solemnity, whatever it is, and focus on the Holy Spirit. Now, this is where the Eastern Church stresses quite a bit in that matter, where the liturgy is elaborate and very, very dignified in its own way, and they put this great importance on that. They put great importance. I am not competent enough to tell you as much about the Eastern Church, but this basic thing I can tell you about. So they have their own liturgies and the stress or whatever it is. Consequently, you have the hierarchy is, you have the metropolitan person, or they call him some other name, the Orthodox bishop or whatever it is.
But having said that, Father, I am told, I don't know whether this is true, please confirm otherwise, that Eastern priests can be married.
Yeah, in some churches, yes, in some Eastern.
But why should there be a difference?
Well, in the Latin Church, this has not been the case. See, you have to understand the question of where the separation took place. From the time of Constantine, he had his eastern capital, Constantinople. That was his eastern capital. Rome was his western capital. Now, in the eastern capital, after some time, after Constantine, there was some other person who was put there, and he broke away from Rome. And the people who were there began to have their own culture and all that tradition, which was not so much with Rome. So you have the Roman, or what is known as the Latin Rite. That's what we call the Latin Rite. And here you have the Eastern Rite.
Well, then what's the difference between a Protestant and an Eastern Rite?
No. Protestant is different. Protestant is they protested against the Pope. That's what the group started it. We started with Henry VIII, who very clearly he was already married to Catherine of Aragon, and with permission, actually they were related, but with permission of the Pope they got married. But she could not have an heir. She could not have a child, and so he wanted to divorce her. But the Pope said, no, you cannot divorce her. There is no question. This is a normal, legitimate marriage. But then he made himself Pope, and that's how it was.
But having said that, let us say there is a Protestant pastor or priest who is married.
Yeah.
And through divine and Holy Spirit, etc., he then decides that Catholicism is the best for him. Can he then continue to be a priest under the Catholicism banner, though he is married and continue to be married?
What you said is actually an actual fact. There have been priests who have been ordained, who were married and then have become Catholic. And now they have asked permission, and they have been allowed to be carrying on as priests.
Okay.
Fine.
So, what would the Catholic priest say then?
What would he say?
But I mean, here is my companion who is married and I am not. Why should there be such a difference?
When you were told we were willing to be ordained, this was the criterion, and you can't help it now. This is it. And now, if you had asked me, it would be a different answer. I am a religious, and my religion, irrespective of whether I became a priest or not, I had my 3 vows. So that would exclude me. But the diocesan priest, yes, you're right, they could have.
So now there are some priests who have been a priest for a few years, and they don't quite like the system, as it were. Can they then just leave the church, leave the priesthood?
Leave the priesthood, maybe they would be allowed for very special reason or the other. But I honestly cannot see a person saying, I don't want to be a priest. Because once a priest, you're always a priest. You have been ordained. You are for eternity. You are ordained a priest. However, he may not be allowed to exercise his priesthood. That's different. Okay, because of some reason or the other, or on his part, I don't know of many cases of that, what you are mentioning, but where he is deprived of his exercise of the priesthood. Yes, then a bishop can do that. Can forbid him to exercise his priesthood.
Yeah, but then some priests leave the priesthood because they want to get married now. And some priests because they find that the system is too tough. So, in both cases, does he require some special permission from the bishop or the pope to leave the priesthood?
Yes, they have to get permission, especially from things. But when, for instance, some people just leave it and go out from there, they have absolutely no right to exercise their priesthood. That there is very, very clear. And the church is clear about this and tells the faithful sometimes, because there has been one case here in Goa before, where a person was told and he was forbidden to exercise his priesthood. He belonged to the Bombay diocese, had come to Goa, and he was doing some things and all that. And the bishop said very clearly to the people, and tell the people already, he is not allowed to exercise his priesthood. What he is doing there is wrong. Therefore, you should not go there. Okay, that's his different matter.
There is a very strong word called excommunication.
Yes.
Does a priest who leaves the priesthood due to marriage or whatever be the reason, is he excommunicated?
See, if, for instance, he did not seek the permission to go ahead and get married with having left the priesthood, then he automatically excommunicates himself from the communion of the faithful. Therefore, he excommunicates himself. But if, for instance, he went through the normal thing, there's no question of excommunication. He is not a priest. He's not allowed to exercise his priesthood. But he could be a Christian. He could be carry on.
So who get that label of excommunicated?
He would imply, for in the case which I mentioned earlier, he would automatically be excommunicating himself. I am not part of this communion of people.
So he excommunicates himself?
Yes. By the very fact that he has not taken a legitimate permission. He was ordained by a legitimate bishop, and he has not taken permission from that bishop or the bishop where he is at the moment. He doesn't take any permission. He just goes and runs away with the person and gets married. He has automatically excommunicated.
But that doesn't seem to be right. I thought the word excommunicate means that the hierarchy of the church actually uses that word.
No, the hierarchy of the church can use that when they actually say it and pronounce it on somebody. But for instance, you do something which is the thing you may not. The hierarchy may not have pronounced that on you, but you have actually cut yourself out from that, which you don't belong.
So the word, you're a priest forever.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, the priesthood of Jesus Christ was not an Aaronic, Aaron, Aaron was the priest when Moses was there. Now, that Aaronic priesthood came in the year maybe 400 years after Abraham, time-wise if you want it. So, there was that priesthood. Now, Jesus was of the tribe of Judah. He was not of the tribe of Levi. Now, Levi was the tribe where the priests came from, only from that tribe. So, he was not a priest in that sense of the Aaronic. But he was already from the time of eternity. He belonged to the Father, and he could be the priest, meaning the mediator between God and man, the only mediator between God and man. Now, when he came, therefore, he offered, unlike, the Mosaic priesthood used to be, once a year, especially at a particular time, they would have a chance for you can be reconciled. So they had the Yom Kippur. It was a very special day of complete fasting and prayer and reflection, asking God to forgive us our sin. So they had it in two forms. One, they took a particular ram or a goat, and the people would come there and they put their hands on that particular goat and said, all my sins are on you. I denounce my sin and put it on you. And then that goat was driven out into the wilderness, where it would probably be eaten by wild animals. Now that became the scapegoat. You've heard of that word, scapegoat. That became the scapegoat where my sins are thrown away because of that. This was one way. Another way was when the high priest on a particular day would take the blood of the goat or the lambs, would take and sprinkle it first on the Holy of Holies. Blood signified life for the Jews even today. Then the remaining blood was sprinkled on the people. The significance, we too are having the same life. You see, life, blood is life. So we have the same life, now we are blood relations. Though we are you know the word for atonement?
Yeah.
Spell it.
A-T-O-N.
Go slow.
A-T-O-N-E-M-E-N-T.
So, at 1 mint.
Right.
We are at 1 mint with each other. That's it.
Okay.
So
Well,
that was that was what they used to do. The high priest would go into the Holy of Holies once a year. Now, entering that Holy of Holies, he had to have a very strange thing. He had to have a rope tied round his ankle. Because if he went in and had a heart attack, nobody could go inside it. They had to pull him out. However silly it is, but this way. Now, Jesus did not enter into that. They went, and because this atonement was done, okay, then it was, therefore we are atoned now. Now, Jesus did not come there. He took, now the high priest would take the blood of goats and lambs. Jesus did not take any blood of goats. He took his own blood. And he offered himself because he was a pure victim. Pure, absolutely pure, sinless victim. He could offer a perfect sacrifice. And he didn't go to this structure which was created by human beings. He went straight to heaven and he gave it to the Father.
wow.
So that reconciliation was there. Once and for all. This had to be done every year. That was once and for all.
That's right.
Now, what is the Eucharist? That same sacrifice which Jesus offered, made present in this particular of what we do.
Wow.
Anyway, that we could talk about in the Eucharist if we need to talk about.
I think we have heard some very, very interesting information about the priesthood early days, the Eastern side, the Protestant side, and so many other facts which make us more and more aware of what our faith is all about. And therefore, your questions are welcome in case you have not understood a particular thing or want a little bit more elaboration. Please send your question to Father Ronnie. He's at the Jesuit house and he'll be happy to answer you either directly there or on TV. So thank you once again, Father Ronnie, for making it such an interesting afternoon. And I hope all our viewers have found it as interesting as I found it. So thank you very much, Father.
Thank you very much.
you.
God bless.